be global and we try to be smart. And we try very hard to get both of those every week. But I want to hear our authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent about a subject, who will make you smarter, move you emotionally, who will kind of challenge your mind or move your heart. And that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sundays on CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
This is Don Lemon Tonight. America is mourning after multiple mass shootings across the country this weekend at a grocery store, a church, a few blocks from an NBA game, a flea market, the most deadly of massacres in Buffalo. 10 people were killed in a predominantly black area. Here's how officials describe the racist attack.
This was a straight-up hate crime, pure evil.
He had the N-word, which unfortunately was carved into one of his weapons. Clearly, he was bent on hate.
Plus, major twists in key primary races with just hours to go until polls open. In Pennsylvania, a Democratic frontrunner suffering a stroke and a Republican candidate who marched at the Capitol on January 6th rising to the top of the field. And combat mission over. That is a message from Ukrainian forces after months of nonstop shelling at the steel plant in Mariupol. We're going to have the latest on the agreement with Russia that led to hundreds of evacuations. For more on these horrific shootings, though, and the motivations behind them, I want to turn now to CNN's Omar Jimenez in Buffalo, New York. Stephanie Elam is in Laguna Woods, California. Good evening to both of you. Omar, let's start with you. We are learning tonight from the suspect's social media posts that he visited the market 3 times in March, casing the store, collecting information on who was inside. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Don. So based on those posts, the suspect first left his home about 200 miles away from here to come to the Tops supermarket on March 8th. When he got here, he went into that store 3 times that day at 12, 2 o'clock, and 4 p.m., taking notes on what he was seeing, particularly on how many black people he was seeing versus white people when he was there. Also making a map of what's inside, the aisles, the exits, and more. Even, again, according to these posts, wrote that he planned to carry out this attack a week from then, on March 15th, but kept delaying. That he also initially intended to potentially attack a church or an elementary school, but as we now know, Don, eventually settled on a grocery store.
And Stephanie Elam, a horrible church shooting in Laguna Woods, California, where you are right now. Officials are saying the suspect is David Cho. Was upset about political tensions between China and Taiwan. What else have officials uncovered so far in their investigation?
Well, we did learn some more details today, Don. What we know is that this assailant, 68 years old, has been residing in Las Vegas, Nevada. He immigrated to the United States from China many years ago. But we understand, based on some of the writings they found in his possession, that he had a lot of anger toward Taiwan. And that is what they do believe is behind the reason why he walked into this congregation and was there when they were having this luncheon after their church service. They found 4 Molotov cocktails that were around the church. They also said that he superglued some of the locks and chained some of the doors, even nailing some of the doors to try to keep those 50 or so people inside of the church when he was going about shooting people at random. Now, he shot 5 people, and we have seen that at least 4 of them have improved conditions. Not clear about the other one, but they were between the ages of 66 and 92. Then there was one person who lost his life, Dr. John Chang, 52 years old, and officials today saying that he charged the shooter. And that really did make a difference because it gave everyone else in the congregation a chance to then go ahead and disable this assailant. They were able to get his 2 handguns away. And think about it, this mostly elderly congregation managed to get those weapons away and then hogtie this man until officials were able to get to the scene. They're saying because of that, this really did save a lot of lives. They're being called heroes, and especially Dr. John Chang, because of what he did. It cost him his life, but his heroism may have saved what was really a tragic event yesterday from being much, much worse. I can also tell you that now, tomorrow, we should see this assailant in court. He's charged with 1 count of felony murder and 5 counts of felony attempted murder. Don.
Here we go from coast to coast. New York and California. It's awful. Thank you both. I appreciate it, Omar and Stephanie. Now I want to bring in Catherine Schweit, the founder and former head of the FBI's active shooter program. She's also the author and podcast host of Stop the Killing. Catherine, thanks so much for joining. Appreciate it.
You bet.
So this new information tonight
Happy to be
that
here.
the shooter case, the supermarket, a soft target with easy access to go on his racist rampage. Does this spark more to how he may have learned from previous mass shootings?
Yeah, I think we find all of these shooters learn from somebody else, whether it's racism, depression, or, financial problems, marital problems, be mad because your girlfriend broke up with you. They go to the internet to look for somebody who's like kind. And that's generally what we're seeing in these kinds of situations, especially it seems like the worst mass shootings. Very few do we not find a trail along the internet where they found somebody else who they could bond with, even if it was just their image or their story that was told. And that's exactly what we saw here, right? Somebody who bonded over, hate speak that he really hadn't really espoused before.
When you think about the online community that he had, is it fair to say that he was a lone wolf, or that he was in this alone?
Yeah. That's, we use the term, and I'd say when I was in the FBI, 20 years in the FBI, when we use the term lone wolf or loner, we're talking about somebody who's not inspired by a foreign terrorist organization or a foreign, unfriendly foreign country. So that's when we talk about a lone wolf. But I think in this case, it's kind of a misnomer that these individuals are loners or alone. The average age of a shooter of this type is 35, and which is not, and they're married, they have jobs, they have friends and associations with people. Many people say, "Oh, I can't believe this. I was just with him last week. I was just with him at a party. We just went to the dance together. We drink every night after work on Fridays." So they really aren't loners. They just create a world on their own as a little segment of their whatever is frustrating them and torturing them, and that's where they find it, is in these like kinds online.
I want to put up the picture of this arsenal. CNN obtained this photo of the arsenal of guns located in the shooter's car. Catherine, writing on weapons include "White Lives Matter." He planned the attack for a long time. Yeah. He bought the guns, the ammunition, the body armor, had an incident in high school that led to a mental health evaluation. Still no red flags. Why not?
There were red flags, and it's not unusual for somebody to plan for months and even years to do this kind of targeted violence. Somebody who's on a trajectory towards targeted violence like this does plan ahead of time. It's not a snap decision. People say, "Oh, he just snapped." No, these shootings are always planned, and there's a process and when I say there were signs, I say we'll find more and more of them, but we already know what some of them were. The incident at the school before, and the mental health evaluation, and then now other kids are coming out that he went to school with, their neighbors who say, "Oh yeah, I remember this," or "I saw that," and we'll find other things. There's probably a long trail of behavioral indicators, is what we call them, meaning atypical behavior, things that showed that he was on a trajectory towards violence. Especially if you think of things like he buys ammunition, he buys camo clothing, he buys a steel plate to put in his vest. You don't pick that up on Amazon without a little, somebody in your house should be saying, "What?" But there was, and the 3 guns, and the hate speech that was all over those weapons that you just showed, is indicative of what we've seen in some other shooters, where they're trying to create a persona they want to be because they don't have confidence in who they are. And I think that's what the tale will be about this young man.
Catherine Schweit, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us.
Happy to be here.
I want to bring in now Darius Pridgeon, the president of the Buffalo Common Council and bishop at True Bethel. Darius, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for continuing to cover this.
How you doing?
Not good. I keep saying okay, but the truth of the matter is not good.
I understand you live 2 blocks from the supermarket, right? And you knew Aaron Salter, Catherine Massey. Talk to me about what has been taken from your community, the loss of these folks, and really so many others, Darius.
You know, across the country, when you talk about African-American neighborhoods, so many people think about crime or dilapidation. It's not like that here. It might not be the best neighborhood, but it's definitely not the worst. But everybody who goes to a grocery store, and at least here, they're not gangbangers. They're not people who are trying to hurt somebody. They're people who had money in their pocket to go and shop. You know, Cat Massey, I've sat in her house as she tried to make a better Buffalo, as she wrote op-ed pieces against gun violence. The security guard, he was more than a security guard. He was a brother. I would go get groceries. I live, like you said, 2 blocks away. Moved in a neighborhood 3 years ago, grew up in this neighborhood, actually. When I would go and get my groceries, he would walk with me to my car, having conversations. Not just him, so many other people in that store. It's not just a regular grocery store. It's our meeting place.
I spoke to his son today, and he said, you know, he just wanted his dad to be honored. I mean, it's just, he's a hero in all of this. And, you know, I don't really know what to say, Darius. It's just, I'm at a loss for words when it comes to what happened.
You know what? I'm really working hard to keep it together, to do all the interviews and to be a leader in our community that's strong. It's really tough. But his dad and all of the other people, Miss Young, Mother Young, like, because Buffalo may be the 2nd largest city in the state of New York, we're not really a large city when it comes to the Black community. Every single person who was lost has a connection, like 1 degree or 2 degree from everybody else. And so from the guard to Miss Young, to Cat, I keep going down the line. The young man who came in town to get a cake, and where we all know his family. So it's like really tough, because we're not a New York City where maybe you don't know your neighbors, you know, 2 blocks down. We know our neighbors. And at the end of the day, we know that there are still people in the United States who feel like, it's just it's just urban areas. It's just Black people. It's just not true. And we never expected this. I was going to Tops like 20 minutes before, to this Tops, and decided out of my laziness to just go and buy food that was already cooked. My kids, you know, we were about to allow our teenagers to walk around the corner this year by themselves to Tops. You know, everybody's on edge now. He changed a lot of things, but he didn't win. Yeah. He did not win.
Well, Darius, I want to point this out, because I think it's similar. I don't know if you saw the top of the show about what I said about calling it what it is, and then unless you face it, right, you can't change it. In your sermon yesterday, you called out those who tell you that they're a friend of the Black community, but remain silent. And I just want to play that for our audience. Here it is.
Don't tell me you love all people and you don't stand up against racism, and you don't stand up against hatred, and you don't stand up against white supremacy. You do your church over there. But as for us over here, we're grieving. And if you do not stand behind those holy desks and acknowledge that there are still people who hate Black people, you can go to hell with the shooter for all I care.
There's a collective trauma that we have, that, you know, as a community. And now, look, this is when you want your allies, right, to say something. This is the time to say something, because this moment will pass, and then there'll be another one, and then people won't stand up, and they won't say it, and they won't call it what it is, and they'll hem and haw about it, and then they don't want to offend people because this person, well, I didn't mean that. We know what it is. Everyone knows what it is.
Absolutely. Listen, I here's what's tough for me. I had so many people, and I represent our denomination, New York State, on the level of a bishop or a conference. I've had people, white and black, reach out to me and say, "We're with you." But here's my problem. They say, so many of them have said, "How are you?" I wasn't in TOPS. It's not about just how I am, but here's what agitates me. At the end of the day, that's where they stop. You can't ask me how I am and not decry how horrible this crime was, especially if you're not African American. Then what you're saying to me, I'm worried about you because I know you, but I'm not worried about African Americans across this country. And I've been plain, I probably have lost some friends, and here's my message. Pass me up if you're calling me saying, or anybody else, or you're at work saying, oh, how are you? Oh, I have black friends. Pass by me with that. At the end of the day, if you can say that, then right then you should say, and what happened in Buffalo, New York, and what happens across the country with racists, with white supremacists is wrong. And if you don't say that, find other friends. Leave me alone. I don't want to come to your church. I don't want to kumbaya. I don't want to do a prayer meeting in which we go, we shall overcome. I've overcome, and our people have overcome. If you don't stand up, whoever is watching, whoever is listening, and you're a part of black or white America, and then you don't stand up and say, this is wrong, and he was wrong, then shame on you. Leave me alone.
Nothing else to say, Darius. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you joining.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank
Appreciate
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope y'all heard that. The suspected Buffalo gunman is a believer in the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, the false belief that white Americans are being replaced by people of other races. It's also creeping into mainstream GOP politics. It's not creeping, it is there. Because many of the folks, supposed sensible Republicans, don't want to call it out. So what does that make you? An enabler. Some Republicans, though, some are pushing back against it. We're going to talk about that next.
I believe we have an opportunity to move towards hope because we are learning more about this criminal enterprise. My name is Lisa C. Williams. I'm a philanthropist and an advocate for survivors of human trafficking. When I look back over 22 years of when I first started working in this space, I was simply trying to find safe shelter for girls who were 10 and 11 years old who were being bought and sold on our streets. One of the things that I remember very vividly, it was a turning point in our fight for Rachel's Law, is the CNN special, Children for Sale. It took something like that documentary that was hosted by Jada Pinkett Smith to wake up people and for them to want to look at it and understand what we were saying to them. And that just gave us momentum. And we took that film and we took it all over Georgia, and we galvanized people around a movement that we call the I Am Rachel movement to tell them about the safe harbor law that we were trying to get passed. And 83% of Georgians said, we agree that children are children and not the criminals.
Out front tonight, a potential breakthrough in treating coronavirus.
We've gotten very little help from the federal government.
Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? One of our viewers saw you last night on the show. She says she's going to pay your rent this month. Shut up. I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse, knowing that that could put you at risk for this?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Aaron Burnett out front on CNN. He's interviewed 5 U.S. presidents, authored 7 books, and has an independent voice that resonates.
What happened to when we were united against a common enemy?
He's raw, unique, and one of America's most important talk show hosts. Watch Smirconish, Saturday on CNN.
Advancement. Adaptation. New Marketplace Middle East.
Travel and tourism trends in the region.
Marketplace Middle East. Saturday on CNN.
An online tirade raid attributed to the suspect in the Buffalo mass shooting, rooted in replacement theory, the false idea that whites are being slowly and intentionally replaced by minorities and immigrants. Only the alleged shooter is responsible for his actions, but the racist theory has been mainstream online in GOP politics and right-wing media. And tonight, some GOP lawmakers are speaking out against it. Joining me now, CNN political commentators Ana Navarro and Scott Jennings. I say some. Thank you both for joining us. Good evening to you. Anna, GOP Senator Thom Tillis told reporters tonight that replacement theory is garbage. There are some Republicans like him, Liz Cheney, publicly condemning it. Thank goodness for them. But where's everybody else, Anna?
Hiding under a rock because they know they bear responsibility and because they know they've been complicit with this incredible amount of bullshit that's coming out of the Republican Party, these made-up, manufactured culture wars against gays, against Latinos, against Black people, you name it. Is it CRT? Is it GRT? Is it Don't Say Gay? And it's about driving people to the polls through fear, through anxiety, through angst, instead of offering ideas and solutions. And that can't be the fall Black plan. Listen, great replacement theory used to be a fringe theory for crazy people, but it's been embraced by mainstream Republicans, by Republican leadership like Elise Stefanik and so many others. It's been embraced by Fox News, by Tucker Carlson, by Laura Ingraham. I want people to name names. I want them to be called out because the stuff they're saying, the words they are uttering is leading to far worse. As Liz Cheney said today, it is leading to the death of people. Don, you and I were here and we sat and we talked about the white supremacist who killed 23 Latinos at a Walmart in El Paso in 2019. He drove hours and hours to go hunt down my people. And now we have another white supremacist domestic terrorist who drove hours and hours to go hunt down Black people, who figured it all out. This 18-year-old didn't make this up from thin air. He got radicalized from the internet, from watching the Facebook ads that Elise Stefanik bought, from listening to all of this stuff that's going on. So this cannot be the new normal for the Republican Party. Well, and any Republican who has a conscience and some principles needs to stand up and call this out and name names.
Listen, I don't know if he watched Elise Stefanik's Facebook ads, but I do get your overall point, Anna. And Scott, listen, Congressman Matt Gaetz promoted this racist theory. High-profile GOP candidates this election cycle have alluded to it. Ohio State Senate candidate J.D. Vance released an ad saying an open border is flooding Ohio with Democratic voters. I mean, okay, they can't vote, but what do you say to them? People, you know, immigrants can't vote when they come into the country, but go on.
Yeah, I think that a couple things. Number one, what this guy obviously saw on the internet is psychotic, it's deranged, it's racist, it is the worst of humanity put into a place where someone who obviously has mental illness issues could get to it, become radicalized by it, and then act upon it. And so it should be very easy for all of us to point that out. Number two, it's not clear, what all of his sources of information were, and so I don't think actually you can sit and blame somebody's Facebook ads for this tonight. I do think it's very easy, though, to see exactly what happened. A deranged young person got access to information, and it took a very, very bad turn. It should be easy to say this for any politician. One of the things, honestly, Don, that jumps out at me, in addition to the racial component of this, is the fact that this person apparently last year had expressed some violent views in his own school and had apparently undergone a mental evaluation, and somehow that information just evaporated, and then obviously he wound up carrying out a similar violent act, in Buffalo, tragically. One of the legal or lawmaking issues that I think we ought to look at is, how did that happen? How could it be that someone expresses violent views and then it just falls through the cracks, only for us to have this tragedy all these months later? So I really think there's a couple of issues here that need to be looked at, the issues you've raised in addition to this issue.
That does need to be raised, but the question, the thing is, or the overall thing is, if those ideas weren't there for him to pick apart and to absorb, then perhaps, even if one, and also the access to guns, let's not forget that perhaps we would not be in this moment, but here we are. Listen,
listen, all of those things you guys are mentioning, and Scott, I know you to be a good person. All those things you're mentioning, mental health, access to guns, are things that require legislation to change. And if it didn't change after over 20 little kids were killed in Sandy Hook, it's not going to change. But what we can all change as individuals and call for change is the mainstreaming of this great replacement theory that has led to the death of people. And it needs to be called out without any reservation. And absolutely, I am pointing a finger at Elise Stefanik. And absolutely, I am pointing a finger at Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and everybody else who has made this mainstream. Scott, when you and I became Republicans as young people, this was a fringe theory, a conspiracy theory for crazy people on the fringe. It's become mainstream by GOP leaders and by GOP influencers on Fox News. And that needs to be called out, because it is costing the lives of people who look like Don and who look like me. So I am not going to shut up. I'm not going to talk about, leave it to mental health. There's a hell of a lot of crazy people in America, but they're not killing black and brown people. This guy was more than having a mental health issue. He's a racist, white supremacist, radicalized through great replacement theory. And this needs to be called out, and needs to be called out loudly and by all of us.
Ana Navarro, Scott Jennings, thank you both. We'll be right back.
I'm Will Ripley in Taipei, Taiwan, and this is CNN.
Welcome to The Lead. We begin with breaking news. The United States has plunged into a recession. We're seeing infections at an all-time high. What's your reaction to that? Here are the facts.
The Lead with Jake Tapper.
Transformation, technology, new Marketplace Europe.
Brand designs and brand price tags to match. We're exploring the luxurious world of watches.
Marketplace Europe, Sunday on CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta in New York, and this is CNN.
Former President Trump trying to give embattled GOP Congressman Madison Cawthorn a last-minute boost in his primary race. Just one day before North Carolina voters head to the polls, Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform, when Madison was first elected to Congress, he did a great job. Recently, he made some foolish mistakes, which I don't believe he'll make again. Let's give Madison a second chance. But Trump is talking about Cawthorn bringing a gun to the airport twice. One time it was loaded. Also claiming his fellow Republicans invited him to a cocaine-fueled orgies, sexual harassment allegations, and getting pulled over for driving with a revoked license, also twice. So do voters think those were all foolish mistakes? CNN's Diane Gallagher finds out.
The mountainous, tree-covered landscape of Western Carolina has become an ugly political battleground.
Cawthorn will lie about anything.
As Republicans wage an all-out war on embattled but Trump-endorsed Congressman Madison Cawthorn. He faces off against 7 GOP challengers in Tuesday's primary, who cast the scandal-plagued representative as absent, fame-hungry, even dangerous.
A lot of things that he's said and done recently has aired in other countries as propaganda. That goes back to a national security issue.
Pitching themselves to the very red district as more serious, less distracting alternatives.
Instead of talking about what lingerie that our congressman might like to wear in his spare time, we need to be talking about inflation and real issues.
Republicans have rallied around the other candidates, like State Senator Chuck Edwards, who has the backing of North Carolina's most powerful players, including Senator Thom Tillis.
Putin used Cawthorn's claims.
And the 6 figures that a Tillis-connected super PAC has dropped on attack ads.
I've really never seen the swamp launch such a coordinated attack against any individual in politics except for Donald Trump.
Former President Donald Trump endorsed the 26-year-old Cawthorn more than a year ago, though he's generally stayed away from the race. But on the eve of the primary, Trump posted on his Truth Social platform, rehashing Cawthorn's background while adding, "Recently, he made some foolish mistakes, which I don't believe he'll make again. Let's give Madison a second chance." And we found plenty of voters in Cawthorn's hometown of Hendersonville who plan to do just that.
Well, I think he's a good kid. It's political. Everybody's trying to, do what they can to make themselves look good and make the opponent look bad.
A lot of it's made up, fabricated stuff.
But for others, between the unflattering headlines, poor congressional attendance, and fights over whether he shut down district offices, it's just too much drama.
He's real narcissistic, and I'm just not into that.
North Carolina's 11th district is massive and rural, making voters both physically and digitally hard to reach. But one Cawthorn misstep that did seem to reach the entire district, his move late last year when new maps were drawn to leave it behind.
I will be running for Congress in the 13th Congressional District. This move is not an abandonment.
But a lot of people took it that way.
So when Madison Cawthorn decided to leave the congressional district and run in Charlotte, he asked me to step in and run as the America First candidate.
And when the court redrew the maps, Cawthorn came back.
Something that adds a little bit of unpredictability to tomorrow's race. The unaffiliated voter, more than 40% of the ballots that have been cast in the Republican primary during early voting in this district comes from an unaffiliated voter. And there was a movement to push Democrats to change their affiliation and moderate voters to vote against Madison Cawthorn. Don, one other thing that's going to factor in North Carolina law, it requires a candidate to get 30% of the vote in order to avoid a runoff. Experts say that could actually help Madison Cawthorn because the field vying to unseat him is so large.
Diane, thank you very much. Appreciate that. A curveball in the Pennsylvania primary. One of the leading contenders for the Democratic Senate nomination suffering a stroke just hours before the vote. That story is next.
Trends, tech, news, Marketplace Asia.
How the pandemic continues to affect consumer habits and corporate spending across Asia, in China and beyond.
Marketplace Asia, Saturday on CNN.
More mortar strikes very, very close. They want us to start moving.
There's a sense the Russians haven't yet brought their full destructive power to bear.
Vladimir and his men have been alert since 4 a.m., fearing a Russian attack.
They were living here in frigid temperatures.
Sounds to me like many of these war crimes will go unpunished.
In Helsinki,
Kyiv,
Kramatorsk.
This is CNN.
Today we live in an unpredictable environment and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
Our engine continues, our impetus, our momentum.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers. Give me the facts on voter fraud.
There has never been a moment where voter fraud has affected the outcome of an election.
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
Normally this theatre would be filled with people and art and debate and energy, and so now we have to rely on the two of us.
How interesting is it to be Tyler Mitchell today? It's crucial we make sense of what's happening. There seems to be some confusion that maybe you can clear up. Where are the US forces in Syria going? And fully understand what's at stake.
What's happening now in the world is a great thing because people are talking about subjects they never did before.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
With Bitcoin, not only do we have the best monetary asset in human history, we have the best monetary network in human history. Bitcoin solved a lot of the monetary functions that we know as very expensive with cryptography and with math. And so I can escrow a bearer instrument in Bitcoin. It's worth the same amount in Chicago as it is in London, as it is in Nigeria, as it is in Argentina, and I can zip it around the world instantly and for free. What we can do is take your dollars and escrow them around the world over the Bitcoin network. So think about this. What if I wanted to send money from Chicago to London? What we can do is take dollars out of your bank account, turn it into Bitcoin, zip that value to London instantly and for free. You blink, you'd miss it. It goes so fast and it costs nothing. And then we turn it back into British pounds. That's innovation, and that's how we use Bitcoin, the monetary network.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating,
connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, today on CNN.
On this month's Living Golf, Southeast Asia bets big on golf as international tourism bounces back. Tour the new courses springing up along Vietnam's coastline. Meet a young Thai player who has just made history.
I think the thing with Thai golfers is that we're very fortunate.
And see what else the region has to offer.
The speed at which golf is developing in this country is phenomenal.
Join me, Shane O'Donoghue, for this month's Living Golf.
Saturday on CNN, in association with Gulf Saudi.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
I'm Larry Madowo in Kilifi, Kenya, and this is CNN.
Major twists ahead of tomorrow's crucial primary races in Pennsylvania. Here's new video of the top Democratic Senate candidate in the hospital recovering from a stroke, and that's where he's going to spend Election Day. John Fetterman's wife speaking to CNN. She says the lieutenant governor is on his way to a full recovery. And on the Republican side, a controversial Senate candidate with a history of bigoted comments is making a sudden surge to the top of the field. Lots to discuss with CNN political commentator Charlie Dent and former Republican congressman, I should say, from Pennsylvania he is, and also senior political analyst Ron Brownstein. Gents, hello to both of you. Good to see you. It's blue suit night. I don't know, maybe Ron has on black, but we're all pretty similar. Good to see both of you. So, Charlie, before we get to Pennsylvania, I've got to ask you about what you heard in Diane Gallagher's piece. Will Trump saying, give Madison Cawthorn a second chance, make a difference, sir?
I tend to think no. I mean, frankly, Madison Cawthorn strikes me as a very troubled young man. He needs an intervention. He needs help. And I think really that's really the bottom line here. This fellow is unwell. He should not be in Congress. But I can't imagine that Trump's semi-endorsement is going to be very helpful. I think this young man has a lot to overcome, both politically and personally.
Ron, now the Democratic frontrunner John Fetterman recovering from a stroke in the hospital right before the Senate primary. What kind of an impact do you think is going to have on this race? Because you say the Democrats can't hold the Senate without picking up Pennsylvania.
Yeah, look, Pennsylvania is an indispensable race for them in the Senate. It is their best chance to take a seat now held by Republicans. Pat Toomey, the Republican senator, is retiring. They've got 4 tough incumbent races of their own to defend, and it's hard to imagine that they can win all of those in this environment. So I think without winning Pennsylvania, it's going to be hard for them to keep the Senate. Look, John Fetterman is a relatively young man. He's 52 years old. He's a big guy. He has projected good health. And I think I've talked to several people in the state today who feel that as long as, in fact, he makes a complete recovery, and he looked, solid in that video that they released today, that they do not think that this will be a big issue in the general election. I mean, he is in a strong position in the primary. I think there's already been 500,000 ballots returned. Unlikely to cost him the primary, and as long as he recovers, unlikely to be a major factor in the general election.
Charlie Dent, on the Republican side, the Senate primary in your home state is now essentially a 3-way tie. Do you think that Kathy Barnett could pull off a win tomorrow night? Because even Trump is saying that she's too extreme to win in November, and that's saying something.
Yeah, well, it sure is. Well, look, I think Kathy Barnett clearly has surged. But I would also say that I saw a lot of ads over the weekend. The rest of the Republican establishment spent one hell of a lot of time pounding her. And they may have tamped her down a little bit. I saw some polling suggesting that she was behind Oz, but ahead of McCormick. But she would be I said the other night, Don, that this would be a double nightmare scenario in the event that she would win the primary. If she were to win the primary, and of course Mastriano win the gubernatorial primary, things would look very bleak for Republicans going into the general election. And I've never seen such a failure of the GOP leadership to condition or shape a field. They just really didn't do it. They left a vacuum, and it was filled by Donald Trump, who endorsed Mastriano, endorsed Oz, and a lot of the Republican leadership is upset. But they have no one to blame but themselves because they chose not to endorse, not to intervene when they could have made a difference.
Hey, Ron, you have been studying all these races around the country and what they mean for the midterms that come November. What's the most important thing you're going to be looking for in the results as they come in tomorrow night?
Look, I think the issue isn't really so much who Donald Trump endorses, but who endorses Donald Trump. I mean, all of the Republican candidates in the Senate race in Pennsylvania are basically fighting over who is the Trumpiest. And we see this in Ohio. Basically, we saw this in Ohio, I think, you know, in North Carolina. The big story, I think, is that with or without Trump's personal imprimatur, Trumpism is consolidating its hold over the Republican Party. And the question will be, as in 2010 and 2012, whether that produces nominees in some states that allows Democrats to overcome what is overall a very tough environment for them with inflation this high. And I think what we're going to be watching tomorrow, I think the likelihood is the evidence is going to show continued consolidation of Trump's hold over the Republican Party with or without his personal endorsements panning out.
Thank you, gentlemen. Imprimatur is such an Ivy League word. I love it.
Wow. SUNY, a SUNY word, a good SUNY word.
Hey, look, CUNY here. I mean, you say imprimatur, I say imprimatur. I mean, you know, maybe I'm sure I'm wrong. Tomato, tomato.
Tomato.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate
it.
Thanks, Don. Evacuations at the Azovstal steel plant, missile strikes in Lviv. A lot of updates tonight on the situation in Ukraine. Colonel Layton's here to take us all through it. That's next.
What makes a great goal? Is it the one that electrifies? The one that is too good to be true? That steals our breath? The one that shakes the world with a thunderstorm of 1,000 voices? The one that rewrites football history? Or is it a goal that is far greater than that? A goal we at Hyundai are committed to, driven by heart and technical prowess. A goal that humanity can only score together under one jersey, one flag, and for one monumental cause, a united world for sustainability. When we rise as one team, team-centric, we can still win this game.
Great things are coming. Are you in?
Cesar de Trey, a manufacturer of gold dentures in England, traveled to India, then part of the British Empire, in 1930 to sell his wares to officers in the British Army. Many of the officers he met complained about their wristwatches getting smashed during polo matches. Back in Europe, de Trey hooked up with two watchmakers, Lecoutre and Edmond Jaeger, and an engineer named Alfred Chavot, and the four of them devised the Reverso. Now, the unique feature of the Reverso is that the case slides and flips over, So the glass part of the watch, the crystal, is not exposed. What is exposed is a solid metal back, which can withstand any bumps and smashes during a polo match or any other sport.
To open doors, to develop contacts, and to unlock secrets, it takes trust.
It was the first time he really came out of his shell in front of a camera.
Trust that you'll listen.
It's so great that you're here today. It just highlights what's making a difference.
That you'll be honest. I don't want to pry, but what sort of conversations do you have with them? Trust that you'll be accurate and you'll be fair. It was an unprecedented move, very eerie. All the roads have been closed off. Describe the scene that you arrived to. The Apache attack helicopter. This is what Captain Wales has been flying. Do you want talks with them?
What is the point of talking now?
Huge amounts of police support coming into this protest. We continue to monitor the government in crisis. This was the Duchess's first news interview. Rare access indeed. That's what it's all about. Max Foster, CNN.
We've missed the globetrotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go.
This is living.
Uncovering the city's DNA, meeting people who will share its secrets.
I love being here.
And making discoveries that wow.
You've got to be joking. Nice here, isn't it?
It's a world of wonder. Now, go and see it. Saturday on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
The nearly 3-month-long siege at the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol, Ukraine, seems to be nearing its end. Russia says an agreement has been reached to evacuate wounded soldiers from the region. Ukrainian President Zelensky confirming tonight that at least 260 have left the plant. This happening as Sweden and Finland say that they will apply for NATO membership. Senior military analyst and retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton at the Magic Wall for us. Colonel, good evening to you. Hundreds evacuated from Azovstal steel plant, including 53 seriously wounded. Ukrainian Defense Ministry saying tonight the fighters have fulfilled their combat mission, calling them heroes of our time. If it is over there, how important was it to the battle that they held out for so long?
Well, Don, good evening. There are so many aspects to this, but I think the most important thing is this, that they held out for so long. Those words that you just said are the key thing here. The fact that they held out in this particular area for this amount of time, for the weeks and really months that we saw them do this, that took away from what the Russians were trying to do in other areas. So Russians had to bring their troops, their weapons, their bombs into this area in an effort to subjugate it and to completely obliterate it. That was the main goal, was to tie up the Russians. And for a large part of this period, they actually were able to do that. So in that sense, the Ukrainians have gained a bit of a victory here, although the Russians, of course, will now have this area. It's fairly clear that they're going to take over in the next few hours or so.
Colonel, Ukrainian forces in the north, near Kharkiv, have pushed Russia all the way back across their border. Talk about their gains and what kind of motivation that kind of advance can give them.
So this is very important. You know, when you look at this particular area, Don, we have a lot of the Russians concentrated right here in the northeast. But you look at the area around Kharkiv and you see the Ukrainian movement right here. But what is really important about this is kind of a propaganda victory for them, because at the Ukrainian-Russian border, that's what this border marker is supposed to represent. These Ukrainian forces are there, and the important thing is that they're right there on Ukrainian soil, touching Russian soil. This means that they've pushed back the Russians back into their homeland, and that's what they're trying to show with this video.
Colonel.